We're going to start seated cross-legged. Swagatam. You can, of course, sit on a block. If you're on 2 blocks, a blanket goes under the shins. Buttock flesh is drawn out and back. Attention is into the heart. Breathing is through the nose. So a sense of settling and arriving. Eyes can be open or closed. In Sukhasana, there's a gap between the legs and the pelvis. Various places you can place the hands. I quite like just to pull gently on my shins, just to pull the spine forwards and up. But other options include palms up. So breathing through the nose allows us to filter and humidify the incoming breath. And then the bum is settling, the breath is deepening, the joints are relaxing. Inhaling to lift, exhaling to turn. So turning the whole body, left hand on the outside of both legs, and jaw soft. And then just notice the spine is level, or tune in on the level spine between the left and right sides. So one way to do that is to shorten and lengthen in turn, left side and the right side of the spine. And in that way you can tune in. It's really easy just to tune in. And so it brings natural awakeness. And what we're learning in yoga, of course, is that awakeness is all we need. The Beatles put it as love is all we need. It's the same thing, because awakeness includes, love includes. Awakeness accommodates all things just the way they are. Love includes all things just the way they are. And of course, love is a power. Frankie Goes to Hollywood reminded us of that. And in the Sanskrit, the word for power, of course, is Shakti, which means to be able. So the heart emitting loving kindness, as the Buddha put it. He said, nothing in all the world is left apart or kept aside from the heart emitting loving kindness. So that's the same thing again, isn't it? Nothing in all the world is left apart or kept aside from the heart emitting loving kindness. So here and now, there's this inclusiveness. We're looking at the spine and the left and right sides. And what we're developing is openness, awakeness, loving kindness, love. These are all synonyms in this context. Lift and turn and keep turning the other way. Breathe through your nose if you can. Relax the jaw, if you will. Relax the temples and the eyes, and the brain and the tongue. So the natural breath through the nose. And still that sense of really settling the buttocks. From any sense of reaching out, of course, is almost like the opposite of love. Because it's not including, it wants what's to come rather than what is. And so the power of love is that we recognize what is, and spontaneously from that recognition comes right action, right speech, right thought. 3 elements from the Buddhist Ashtanga Marga, or 8-part path. Relax the jaw, relax the eyes. Feel the bum, feel the spine. Breathe through the nose if you can. Release and return to center. Let's take a different mudra, or perhaps you took this mudra originally. This is the Jnana mudra. So again, it points to love, which is receptivity. So if the mind is open, it indicates the mind itself, or the receptivity itself, or the awareness itself is what the yogin is prioritizing, what the yogin is taking refuge in, consciousness itself, rather than the objects of consciousness, because in consciousness, all objects in consciousness change, they're impermanent, and our own bodies are subject to old age, sickness, death. Sorry to mention them. So what to do? Take refuge in awareness. That's home. And that includes. Give your fingers a little movement. And we're going to straight away come to laying on our back. So coming out of your cross-leg position, have a yoga belt nearby. And if your head tips back, put something underneath your head. Because if your head's tipping back, it can make you feel dizzy. Even if your head isn't tipping back and you feel dizzy, then it's worth putting a block under your head. Or even if you just want a block under your head. You deserve it. You're worth it. As those adverts for shampoo tell us. So we're going to take a few deep breaths. And it's very, very simple, isn't it? Legs bent means the lower back will extend. So have your legs bent and the lower back muscles, very subtle. It's beautifully subtle. Extend and release. And so the yogin's very interested in these subtle things. Very, very subtle. So we're looking for lines or currents of energy. There's subtle directional currents of energy. So in the lower back, we're hoping that there might be, with this physical setup, there should be, an energetic movement from around the middle of the back through to the pelvis and through the pelvis. And it's subtle, it's just a natural inclination. And that natural inclination will let the lower back settle, the tummy settle, and the nervous system release from any of its three grrs: gripping, grasping, grabbing. Now, when you're ready, let's raise up one leg. It doesn't matter which one. And dorsal and plantar flex the foot. Circle and half circle. Scrunch and unscrunch the toes. Dorsal and plantar flex. Anything goes as long as it flows. It's a bit of a Vajrasati motto, or at least I'd like it to be. The heel in, toes out, cross that leg over the other one. Breathing still through the nose without holding the breath. Lift the foot that's on the floor, off the floor, and plunge through the gap, interlace around your far shin or back thigh, and have a little bit of a roll. So you might roll left, you might roll right. Importantly, the breath flows. Importantly, the breath flows. Jaw absolutely passive, and that means the temples will feel subtly like there's a receding sensation, a movement back away from the skin, a release of pressure. So sometimes you find deep movement, deep release within what externally looks like stillness, but of course, internally, there's this deep release, deep movement.
other times the movement might be externally visible. We might actually want to roll more dynamically. It's very simple because it's all about the breath. Breath releases, means the mind and body are releasing. Okay, nice and easy. Return to center if you're ready. Land your feet. Love to hear that everyone's taking a few really deep breaths. So, absolutely stunning morning. The absolutely best time to do yoga on a stunning morning is early. So deep natural breaths, jaw soft, eyes soft. Raise up the other leg. We call it leg 2. And we're going to dorsum plantar flex. We're going to circle. And anything else that feels good, that feels right, that feels useful. But importantly, again, we don't hold our breath. That is to say, we surrender the breath to the flow in general, the flow that runs through the mind and the body. Heel in, toes out if you're ready, and cross that leg over the other. Similarly, lift the foot up off the floor that's on the floor, plunge through the gap, interlace around your far shin, and rolling left, rolling right. Just looking for sensations that work, that are good. And good means releasing the breath. So we have specific criteria for when we say if it feels right, it feels good, it feels okay. And most obviously that lies with the breath. So if it causes you to let go of whatever the mind took hold of, whatever the mind took hold of. So keep checking in with the breath. Sometimes the mind gets caught in a thought or on a habit pattern. And then that will be indicated by the breath. Release calmly, both feet down. Scoot the buttocks under, take a deep breath deliberately, in and out, of course, both. And go with the flow. Just see if you can be an open palm, as it were, from a closed fist to an open palm. Now we're going to pop our hands underneath the head. So if you did have a block there, take that out and replace it with the hands, or just place the hands there, fingers interlaced. It's a great opportunity to really enjoy the breath, as it will widen the ribs and open the chest. Jaw is soft, lower back is soft. Breath is spontaneous. The yogin is open. Of course, it's a very long, complicated history to the word yogini. The word yogini is certainly associated with flying naked women, and they're flying around Khecarī in space. The Khecarī means to fly around, she who flies around in space. That, of course, has a very complicated history, as I mentioned, but one thing we can take from that is the open mind. Like naked indicates there's no difference between inside and outside. There's a oneness. The flying around indicates spaciousness, limitlessness. These are all consciousness itself. So when we're looking at titles like Yogini, we should bring to mind nakedness and moving around through the sky as a metaphor, as metaphors for openness, for spontaneity, for naturalness, and for oneness. So keep that spirit as you lift your feet up of openness, naturalness, oneness, non-differentiation between inside and outside. Remember, that's what's indicated by nakedness. And nakedness has long since been used as a metaphor in the yoga traditions. We know in the Jain tradition, in the Digambara tradition, Digambara means wearing the sky, so they're butt naked, the Digambaras. Again, again, it's a complicated history, but a big part of that is, inside, outside oneness. Now lift up your head when you're ready and stay in that spirit of the yogini, flying around in space. In other words, openness, which means love, inclusiveness, and inclusiveness has natural to it response that we call sahaja, spontaneity. So as you've lifted up, abdominal muscles are toned. You can feel the rectus abdominis between the pubis and the breastbone. And within that, there's a sense of flow. From here, we're going to extend one leg out to about 45 degrees and then retract it and do the same with the other. And we're going to go back and forth. Now, 3 times on each leg, 6 in total. And try and control it from the deep belly. And once you've done your 6 in total, then raise the legs straight up, still with the head lifted if you can. And so there's still abdominal tone. But the responses are in absolutely 100% connected to the way things are. Buddhists use the word dharma or dhamma to represent the way things are. Let's bring one leg down to about halfway, 45 degrees, and then pull it back up again. And similarly with the other. And again, it's going to be 3. But what we're injunction to do is to really focus on the control of the movement, which means focus on awareness of the movement. So control is a funny word, but it means in this context, the full response that's only possible in full awareness. Once you've done your 3, then the head will come down, and the elbows also. The breath will go deeper. We'll keep the legs up for a couple more breaths if we're happy to. Jaw relaxed, lower back really soft. And then we're going to bend the knees to a right angle or something close to. We're going to lift the head up again. We're going to turn towards this side of the room as we bring elbow and knee towards each other. And then vice versa, the other direction. Keeping the jaw soft. And again, it's 3. 3 is the magic number, no more, no less. I'm referencing a song, of course. But again, control means full awareness of each micro moment. You're not being asked to do or not do anything other than open up. Once you've done the 3, the head comes down, the feet come down, the breath goes deep. Spontaneous, expressive. Like Yogini, or they're also called Ḍākinīs. This beautiful image of a sky dancer that predates Buddhism, goes into what we might call folklore, that goes into Buddhism and what now is called Hinduism. And as I say, very, very complicated history. You can read more about them in the incredible book, The Kiss of the Yogini, by David Gordon White. It's an academic book, so watch out. we're going to lift the pelvis up with the hands still behind the head. And we're going to move the pelvis left, right, up and down. And the idea, of course, is to loosen, to become a yogini in a sense that inside, outside disappear, in the sense that there's this sort of, you can only really move karmalessly if you can move freely. And of course, all the yoga tradition talks about freedom, moksha, it's often called, or mukti, from the same root. So freedom. Freedom means freedom from habituation, from compulsion, from being driven by what your parents told you, your society tells you, what your particular life story so far in your nervous system tells you. So freedom can't be reactive in any way. The founder of this Buddhist center where we are now, Ujjayi Sangharattita, he wrote a little pamphlet called Mind Reactive, Mind Creative. And it's one of those things you don't need to read, just the title's enough. There's the two choices: reactive mind, which is karmic mind, creative mind, which is spontaneous. That's what we're looking for in yoga. Spontaneous creativity. It doesn't come from one's personality, it comes out of emptiness. Coming down slow and calm and easy, landing the bum, taking deep breaths that I can hear. Yeah, 2, 3, 4 or more. The closed fist becomes the open palm. We give ourselves to our yogini form, this naked sky dancer, in this Khecarī mudra. Khecarī means, as I mentioned before, moving around in space. Now we're going to release our hands. We're going to roll over onto our sides, facing in this direction, if you don't mind. And we've got choices, of course, as we always do in this pose, to either extend our arm out and put a block and maybe a blanket there, or just a blanket there, or have our arm forward and put a couple of blocks there, like that, or support the head with the hand. And of course, that's the great thing about yoga, it's adaptive. We extend the bottom ribs several times, a little bit of rolling, just to point us to, again, to our yogini state, you could call it, I suppose. So if you can visualize, the yoginis are normally sort of really, really beautiful, quite wild looking, and they're literally dancing in the sky. As I say, the history is very complicated, and yeah, there's lots of elements to it. But if we look at yoginis in later tradition, later Tantric tradition, then we can think of them as a metaphor for this sort of freedom, ultimate freedom. So they are readapted to that purpose, as so many traditional beliefs have been adapted to the higher purpose of liberation in the South Asian tradition. So just rolling, breathing, enjoying. And once you feel loose, yogini-like, then we'll pick the top leg up in the same spirit. We'll play with it. I hope the metaphor of flying around in the sky so naked is pointing you, directly pointing to this, undifferentiated, we call it Advaita, non-dual, is not me and everything else. That boundary is gone. And when that boundary is gone, the karma is gone. And when the karma is gone, the drives are gone. And when the drives are gone, the blindness is gone. And when the blindness is gone, all action becomes appropriate, supremely appropriate. So we can say supreme or ultimate openness, complete openness leads to ultimate response or complete response or supreme response. So it's beautiful, it's powerful too. Yoginis, of course, are associated with power, with Shakti. And they're no different from when I was talking about love. When you're ready, if you're ready, you can attempt to reach, but keep it playful, keep it spacious, keep it cheeky, sense of fun. And make a really good hold of your big toe. I like to wrap around, I can almost feel the molecules in the fingers extend. So I'm stretching molecule after molecule. So they all feel like they're in contact. And that gathers one together. Keep the breath flowing, keep the brain soft, extend the leg when you're ready by whatever amount you're ready to extend it by. The most important thing is the breath. Of course, I've mentioned that already. So when I talk about a closed fist to an open palm, when I talk about surrender, Sharanagati, when I talk about yoginis dancing around in the sky, when I talk about the power of love, when I talk about spontaneity, I'm talking about the same thing. The indicator is the breath, because we can think, these are nice concepts to hear about, aren't they? Nice to sort of lay back and listen to. But actually, we don't want to listen to them, we want to be them. And so that happens at the breath. Otherwise, I could end up being a fairly interesting, pleasant program on Radio 4 that you're sort of rattling on in the background. But with the breath, then you turn into a yogini. Okay, well done. Bring the leg down calmly whenever you're ready. And bring your knees up. And of course, come up from the side, pushing calmly and slowly. And swapping round your feet to the other end of your mat. And all the same offers apply around different positions. Again, you can have, for example, a blanket between your head and arm like that, which feels rather lovely. Or arm forwards in a couple of blocks, or supporting your head with your hand. Do extend your bottom ribs if you can. And breathe through your nose if you can. Again, a bit of a roll about, which is purposed. The purpose is to resolve back into our yogini form. Undifferentiated, surrendered. The open palm metaphor is the same as the yogini metaphor. It's a different way of saying the same thing. So breath, breath, breath. Pick up the top leg when you're ready and play with it between the horizontal and vertical planes. And again, the idea is to loosen up. So we can talk about the adductors, brevis longus magnus, pectinis gracilis, those inner thigh muscles. We could talk about those as loosening up, and we could talk about how that would help to avoid any twisting, or we could say contradiction in the knee area. So we could talk about all this anatomically just as easily as mythologically or metaphorically. But loosening the inner thigh, it's everything to flow. We don't have any impediment. Blood flows, lymph flows, the mind flows, the breath flows. And flow is the same as non-attachment. And it's clear that yoginis are not attached, not even to they don't even have clothes. This is in Jainism, the Digambaras, one of the reasons they don't wear clothes is because it's indicating letting go. They don't have any possessions whatsoever. They don't even have, like the Buddhists have, they don't even have a begging bowl. When they beg for their food, they have to just get it in their hands, whatever can fit in their open hands. So they really, they're really going for it. If you're ready, reach through and see if you can hold your big toe. Don't hold the breath though. And spend as long as required to integrate. So stretching the molecules of the fingers, integrating, which means surrendering. It's like, I've spoken about this in so many ways, but it's only one thing, when I talk about surrender to the field or the particle returning to the field, or if I've spoken about the mother or the Devi, the goddess, whether I speak about yoginis or whatever, it's always, the experience is the same that we're pointing at. If you want to experiment with raising the leg, that's an option. Keep that jaw passive. Breathe through your nose. And again, this sense of surrender. So that there's the same amount of freedom as is symbolized by the sky dancing deity. Originally, yoginis are just a kind of goddess or a form that you want to get on the right side of. But eventually, yoginis become representations of enlightenment itself. Okay, in your own time, bringing the leg back down, bringing the knees up, coming over to hands and knees. Ready for Vyagrasana. Vyagra meaning tiger. It's one of several words in Sanskrit that mean tiger. Spread your fingers really wide. Breathe through your nose. And jaw soft. And just moving around to feel the weight changing on your palms, which I hope are spread and equidistant from the side of the mat and symmetrical. So there's a sense, could be a sense of circling. It doesn't have to always move one direction. It could move clockwise and anti-clockwise, or one or the other or both. Sometimes spontaneous figures of 8 even happen. But try not to get too, try not to get personally involved. When ready, lift the bum and push from front to back with the palms really meshing into the mat. And maybe there's padding of the heels. Maybe there's deepening of the breath. we're looking for holism. That's one translation of the word yoga. There's lots of opinions about how to correctly translate the word yoga. As often is the case, many of them are right, even if they're different. But if you look in the Monnier Williams English Sanskrit Dictionary, which was written in the 18-somethings, not sure when, 1890 maybe, that most famous of all English Sanskrit dictionaries, there's several definitions of the word yoga. And if you look them up, there's like 30-something with lots of subsidiaries. They all kind of seem to me to mean together. Employment, for example, that's putting together somebody who's appropriate for a job with the job, employment. Or putting on a suit of armor is another translation of yoga, can you believe it? And that is becoming at one, putting something together with something else. Or the thing that attaches a chariot to the horse. You know, that also is putting something together with something else. So together, so inside and outside together, you and me together. Knowledge and action together. Okay, well done. Come down calmly to kneeling. You can, as always, use a block between the heels and buttocks and sit up tall and in a breath-centered way. One hand on top of the other. So your hands can be in the Dhyana Mudra, which is palms one on top of the other, thumb tips touching. This is well known in Buddhism, Amitabha Buddha, often in this position. Amitabha is very well known, particularly in Japan, known by the Japanese version of the name Amida. This is the Buddha of the setting sun. And this represents it's a solar deity, as it were. So the setting sun is like a symbol of reintegration, settling back into yourself. So spontaneously, there may be movement. I often find myself rolling side to side. A few more breaths in this magical pose. Okay, release your hands from the mudra and stretch your legs out in Dandasana. Again, a pose I think of as magical. You're absolutely encouraged and welcome to sit on a block, or if you've got two blocks, even better to sit on two blocks, short end to short end for Dandasana. If you're not sure whether to sit on blocks or not, it certainly won't be harmful in any way. But really, it's the criteria is that we need to feel the lower back can draw in and lift up. So in that regard, we're all, whether on blocks or not, going to draw the buttock flesh out back. We're then going to draw the hands back next to the hips. So two blocks are useful because then you can have your hands level with the hips. Some people will need to bend the elbows if they've got very long arms and point the elbows back. Then it's the magic of elevation, which you have to tune in on. Again, you're tuning in on this open spontaneity represented by Yoginī.
It's interesting how the early tradition, can say even before the Tantra, proto-yoginis, are beings that people are often afraid of. And even in the early tantric traditions, practitioners are fearful of yoginis, but they know that they can give them power if they approach them in the right way. But all of that, again, to me is symbolic. Because there's a fear, isn't there, of openness, of letting go, of spontaneity, because we're told, be prepared, we're told this is important, that's important, this, you've got to hold this view and that view, and you've got to join this group and that group, and you've got to join this allegiance and that allegiance. The yoga says wisdom is this naked sky dancer, stripped bare of anything whatsoever, any opinions, any ideas, any preconceptions, even those about yoga. So then spontaneity expresses. Karana means expression. Originally many of the poses were called karanas. Still we have one, still uses that name, Viparita Karani. So play around back and forth, but know your purpose. And if there's a bit of fear in meeting or becoming or merging with the yogini, know that she's your liberator, that she is your power. Openness, shunyata is another way we've talked about it. Shunyata is your power, is your superpower. When you open up, then the mind isn't clouded by opinions and views. And if consciousness is unobstructed and clear, then its responses, the responses of consciousness, will also be unobstructed and clear. So sitting tall, moving left, moving right, broadening, where you can broaden, meditating, broadening the feet. The pose itself gets more and more refined, more and more elevated, more and more spacious, more and more stable. Because the yogini is power. She has the power to know, the power to respond, and the desire to do so. Okay, nice and easy coming out of that beautiful Dandasana. And we're going to come, very simple, to a kneeling position. But before we do, we're going to fold our mat over at the far end and triple fold for triple joy. And we're going to use a block. You can use a cork block. I would say a cork block is better. But if you haven't got one, a regular block's fine. As you can see over on one side of the mat. And then we're going to we're going to kneel, come to a kneeling position. And place our foot over on the block. The standing leg is left slightly sloping, should be left slightly sloping. And the knee turns up towards the ceiling. The arms stretch out, the palms turn up. The tummy is toned, the roots of the neck are free. Inhale, exhale. Strong leg, body turns. You look up and over. Don't hold the breath, don't hold the jaw. Remember that you're still the yogini. So uninhibited by conditioning means karmaless. If our perception is colored by conditioning, it's called lesha in Sanskrit, colored, tinted. And then that's karmic. That is to say, it's productive of a further conditioning. But if it's surrendered, then the movements are power.
what we call Shakti, not personal, me, asserting power over other, but the power that's fundamental to all, the power of consciousness itself. Inhaling to come up calmly, well done. Well done. And then obviously we're going to do the other side. So we're going to fold and refold that back. Pull this camera back a little bit. And similarly with the block, and similarly with the alignment, of course. So in the past, I've said this, I've compared this to the Yogin's espresso in terms of the way it wakes you up. Well, it's certainly the way it wakes me up anyway. Standing leg leaning, a little bit, not too much. The heel lines up with the knee lines up with the ceiling. The standing leg is made strong. Stretch, turn, lift, come down, folding over the top of the thigh. Keep that leg strong, which means integrated. It doesn't mean tight, it means integrated. Stretch your arm up, and that might be where it wants to stay, or maybe up and over. Parighasana is the name of this pose, which means crossbar of a gate. So it sort of melts attachments, again, allowing us to sky dance, Khecarī. Melting attachments. So that's, the physical tensions you feel, how they're connected to the breath. They're attachments in the sense that they're habituations, whether that's habituations that are genetic or epigenetic, or whether that's habituations that are in responses to phenomena that's occurred recently, stored in the nerves or something else. Calmly come up, because an espresso really is just a shot. And then coming out nice and easy. Back to your kneeling Vajrasana. Of course you can and should take support. Breathing through the nose, if you can, rolling hither and thither, here and there. Purposefully to become a sky dancer, closed fist, open palm. It's good. I try to give many different metaphors, so we don't get caught up on the metaphor. We see that where it's pointing and we go there. Otherwise, it's like looking at a sign. If you want to go to, say, I don't know, New York, and there's a sign and it says New York, it's pointing a certain direction, and you just stand and stare at the sign, you're never going to get to New York. You've got to go, okay, oh, it's over there. That's where I need to go. The sign isn't where you're heading. The sign is telling you where it's not your destination. So similarly, these are pointers to directly point you to an experience that's ultimately beyond words. Interlace your fingers, stretch your arms down, rest your thumbs, breathe through your nose, release the jaw and temples, raise the arms when you're ready. As you get about 3/4 of the way up, make sure you don't feel impinged in the descending fibers of the trapezius. So in other words, your neck. Just a highfalutin way of saying neck. Move spontaneously or allow super sassy. This is such a primal. This is sort of primal. In other words, before what I've often called the great before cultural conditioning, cultural norms. Like a baby when they're born, they don't have any idea of any adjectives to describe themselves by. They don't think that they are, English or American or French or Indian or, people tell them that sort of thing. They don't think that they're, funny or not funny, or, clever or not clever, before. They don't think that they're male or female, or any other adjective or label. So we're looking for the great before, the primal. In yoga, it's called the Adi, Adi, which means the first. Adi. Let's get height, let's get lift, and lumbar particularly. Can you feel the lumbar? Many of the parasympathetic nerves are there. So if you lift the lumbar, you get this sense of release, which is what this whole journey is about, isn't it? Take a big wide circle. Hands to the heart in prayer position. Breathe through your nose. So we're going to practice a little mantra uchara, which is a combination, sandhi of mantra plus uchara, which means mantra moving up. And it's going to move up through the pelvic floor, through the heart chakra, which you're symbolizing by keeping your hands there, and up through the crown of the head. So we're going to start at the pelvic floor, and it's up to us to really visualize it, to not just visualize it, but to visually feel as much as possible. And of course, this orientates us to the center. This is supposed to be the home of the yogini, or sometimes this is the same thing as called kundalini or chandalini. So this is the spontaneous, selfless life force energy. So we're going to be pushing up from the pelvic floor through the heart center, through the crown of the head, with the mantra Om. So concentrate on its movement each time, starting down at the pelvic floor, each time feeling it pass through the heart, each time feeling it rise up through the crown. We're going to do 4 of these in total. So let's take a deep breath in, down to the pelvic floor. The last one. And at the end of that, take a deep breath in and out like a sigh. Bringing the hands down to rest and bringing ourselves down to rest, laying on our backs for the final total surrender. I nearly said the final countdown, but there's no countdown for it. Palms facing up. And I've generously allowed 2 whole minutes for Shavasana. So it's blissful, 2 whole minutes of blissful surrender. So the sky dancer, she's naked and she's moving around in the sky, And the sky represents limitlessness, borderlessness. Nakedness represents undifferentiatedness. She's spontaneous because there's nothing. She owns nothing. She's tied to nothing. She's out there in the sky. There are no, what are called fetters. There's nothing holding her. In other words, her movements are akarmic. They're not karmic. Because they're not driven by personal preference, conditioned by, actually, in truth, society.
and its preferences, whether that be the wider society or local societies that we've become part of, member of the world, member of this time period, coming from a certain country, or maybe a certain place, a certain family. Those are all societies within societies. Certain friends. A friend of mine put together a little, very tiny homage to Yoginīs and Ḍākinīs, which are the same thing. Many years ago, he sung it to me, and it was must have been 27 years ago. His name is Jina Palata. Jina are the victorious ones, and means Buddhas and so on. And Palata means protector. So his little song was the Ḍākinīs, dancing with the Ḍākinīs, beyond all realms, beyond all forms, dancing with the Ḍākinīs. Allow a little movement, and you can feel Ḍākinī or Yoginī energy. So if you move your toes, you'll feel the flood of Ḍākinī energy through the pelvis, down through the legs, it runs through the buttocks and the lower back. Just by moving your toes, you'll feel that Ḍākinī energy. We also call it prana, of course. Moving your fingers, you'll feel the same, this time emanating from the chest, the brachial plexus. So it floods the chest, every part of the chest, back and front, and it floods above the chest and below the chest, through to the fingers as they move. And then together, this energy, as it floods the body, causes more and more spontaneity. So those investigative movements, like the goddess is waking up within our own body, so stretches. And eventually these stretches mean that we'll be ready to bend the legs and place the feet on the floor, after which we can scoot the buttocks under, take a deep breath in and out. Or two or three. Then rolling onto your side, facing away from this side of the room. Rolling back again in your own time. And from there you can let in some light and color. And slow and easy, bring yourself up from the side, using your arms to assist your ascent. Hands into a prayer position and saying Om at the end of this sentence, if you agree with the sentence, that is. to wait for that seagull to finish. Maybe I won't wait. May any benefit that we've gained in our acting in this way go to the alleviation of the suffering of any and all beings. Om. Thanks.